everybody? Welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec Caverna. Those are my two favorite idiots, Matt Morrison, Mike Wolfgang. So for some reason, they keep putting Matt in the middle of this set. I don't know why. Nobody wants to see him in this show. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's probably DJ behind the scenes back there. Yeah. Thank you, DJ. Nobody needs him in the middle. Welcome in Wednesday's edition of the show. Mike Wolfgang back on it again. You're not going to be on next Wednesday, though, are you?
No, it's going to be reversed. I'll be on Tuesday, not Wednesday.
All right, there you go. So, heard it from the source himself. On today's show, Wednesdays, as we say, it's our college football show. So, we're starting things off with the rankings release. Then we're going to talk some of the biggest games from this past weekend. Then, of course, we're going to take a check into our MLB playoff games. NHL kind of working along. We'll see what we get out of that. And, of course, we're talking day one of NBA last night. And, of course, the team, the city, goes on tonight. A new season, new hopes. We'll talk about it all. So, boys, let's start this off. Question of the day, the one from yesterday. Which year did the NFL add the Panthers and Jaguars as expansion teams? Any guesses? Do you guys have any?
2001.
No, that wasn't even an option. Your option was 1979, 87, 91, 95, or 2000.
95.
2000.
95, that's correct. 1995, when the Panthers and Jaguars were added. I don't believe, other than the Browns, they've added any team since then. So now, question of the day for today, October 20th. Mike, guess what day it is?
Hump Day.
Hey, it's Hump Day. Who's the highest drafted kicker in NFL history? Your options: Morton Anderson, Jason Alam, Charlie Gogolak, Pete Gogolak, Adam the Goat Vinatieri. Leave your answer somewhere. Come back tomorrow. I'll ask you guys the questions. Don't answer till then tomorrow. See if you guys got any guesses for that one. But let's get into it here. Our top 10, the Casual Sports Podcast. Before we go into it, how about we give down the AP top 10 first? Their top four teams: at number 1, Georgia; at number 2, Cincinnati; Oklahoma at 3rd; Alabama in 4th. Ohio State sits at 5th, Michigan at 6th, Penn State at 7, Oklahoma State at 8, Michigan State at 9, and Oregon at 10. So, boys, our top 10s now. So we're going to start this at number 10. We actually, for the first time, had a two-way tie between two teams this week. So at number 10, Michigan State and Kentucky, the Wildcats, into the top 10 here. You know, they had a good performance this past week. They lost, but, they stay right up there in the conversation. So we'll see what happens going up later into it. At number 9, despite the loss, they're coming back. Iowa, they fell in at number 9 there. I still had them up at 7. You guys both had them at 10. They found their spot right at 9. What are you guys looking for out of Iowa these next few weeks? Probably some offense?
Obviously some offense and a bounce-back game, obviously. I mean, like I said on Monday, Alec, when I was talking to you about them, their defense can only do it for so long. They have to get something out of the offense. I mean, Spencer Petras seems like he's not as mobile, so they're going to have to find something on offense.
They have to completely restructure that whole offense, and I think they have to base a lot of it off Goodson because he's like their main guy that gets, stuff done. I mean, he hit the past couple of weeks, even against Penn State, he had a very productive running game. I say you got to go to him a lot more, whether it's throwing to him or just throwing the ball.
I mean, I think we kind of talked about that on Monday's show. B.J. Goodson, He was spectacular when they got the ball to him. They just have to get it to him more. And I do have to make a quick change there to our playoff bracket. Number 10, I had Michigan State as well at number 9. I, for some reason, was looking at last week's when I put this together. Kentucky did not get into that top 10. Our number 10 team is, in fact, Michigan State. Iowa at number 9. Pardon my mistake on that one. I was quickly throwing this all together because I forgot to do it and I went too quickly on it. So number 10, Michigan State. Number 9, Iowa. Number 8, a team sneaking up in there. First time they've hit our top 10, Oklahoma State. They had a big game against Texas. They come out on top. They had a amazing day on the ground. They make their way into the top 10. What have you guys seen from Oklahoma State so far this season that have put you in a position to make them top 10 despite their undefeated record?
Mike?
Go ahead, Matt.
You can go ahead and go first.
Obviously they had the win over Texas. They were a top 25 team, and they've had some other good wins. And
Baylor, the week before, number 20
Baylor,
right
I was
going
to say Baylor. I couldn't remember some of them, but I looked at their schedule the other day, and they had some big wins. So, in terms of wins, they have a resume to be in the top 10, and they're definitely playing like it, obviously.
They do, but at the same time, you have to be very wary, I think, of those first 3 games they played. And one of those situations, come college football playoff time that we'll get to here in a couple of weeks, when the rankings come out, and I believe 2 weeks from now, November 4th, I think is the first day they drop around there. I think the playoff committee, when it comes down to it, if this is the team that has a one question mark going into the end of the season, look back at these first 3 games, and it might be what keeps them from getting in. Week 1, they barely win against Missouri State, a team that just lost to Youngstown State by 7. They beat Tulsa by 5. They beat Boise State by just 1. Then you even go the next week to tougher Kansas State. They only win by 11. A lot of close wins. They've only won by double digits on the season twice so far. One came against one of their top 25 opponents in Baylor, and then the other against Kansas State. So I think some question marks still before I move them up higher. I had them sitting at 10. I think I have too many question marks. Mike, you had them sitting at 7, and Matt, you had them sitting at 8. I think there's still a few question marks left for this team to answer before they're ready to move up farther into the top 10. But right now, they sit at number 8 for us. At number 7, that team up north. Matt, you're actually the only one that had them sitting at 7. Both Mike and I had them at 8, but they fell in there at a higher ranking. What's your reasoning having them a little bit higher in the rankings this week?
Just
coming off a bye, so...
Yeah, coming off a bye. Maybe they're a little fresher than they were. And maybe Oklahoma State is up there yet, so...
Matt,
I just put Michigan in there, and they've been winning.
They have been playing better. They haven't had any standout wins, but they have talented guys, and it looks like they're somewhat different than they have been in years past.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Michigan State and Oklahoma State, they're very good teams, but like you just said, the only double-digit win was over, who was it again you said?
Baylor and Kansas State for Oklahoma.
So I think they need to get more bigger wins. Like if they would have blew out, Texas, then I'll be like, yeah, they're the real deal. But I think they need to show more. And they're playing Iowa State this week. So this is a team that should come in and double point score, 20 points or more.
Keep in mind, Cyclones have a strong defense, despite the fact that they've been losing games. They have a very tough defense. I think that's kind of an overlooked aspect as a team that, that game against Iowa was, 24-14? It was a close game. Iowa State's in a similar problem, I think, as Iowa. They don't have any offense.
They don't have any offense.
I think they lost. Well, I know they have a great running back. He may have been injured, though. I don't really remember a lot of things going on in college football right now. Okay, next team up on the list. Guys, it's your team. You both had them sitting at 6. I actually had them one above at 5. But they fall in at number 6 on our casual sports rankings. What do you guys think?
So the only reason I had them at 6 and Michigan behind them is because I talked to you about this, Alec. I know Michigan's undefeated, but Penn State, we talked about their resume, but it probably is better than Michigan's. And both teams are on a bye, so I don't understand jumping them one spot when neither team played that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
but you can make the argument. I know you said you had Penn State higher at 5. You said
I had them sitting at number 5. Actually, I had Alabama sitting at the 6th spot.
I would have been fine with somebody dropping Penn State a spot or two because the Iowa loss, it kind of hurts them. But
it doesn't though. Look at who has the better loss. That's kind of what I look at right now. It's who has the better loss. And frankly, Penn State has the better loss than Alabama does at the moment.
This is my thing, and I'm not going to dwell on it too much. I'm not going to make excuses. But everybody knows that if Clifford was in that game, they would have had a lot more control of it than they did, okay? You throw a backup quarterback in there, has never started.
Against the second toughest defense in football.
In Iowa. And he just wasn't prepared. He was sitting on the bench eating popcorn and stuff, and then, boom, they throw him in the game. He's like, what? What did I do? What do I do?
Here's my thing. And we talk about I know the environment Penn State was in that game and the situation they were in, and they only lost by 3. And I guess you could say, I've been saying it's a good loss, but then next week Purdue beats them, and really it was 17-7 the whole game, but it really didn't feel like it was that close.
No,
so
Purdue was putting them down.
It was a good loss, but after this past week, you can't have it both ways. They lose to Purdue, and it kind of makes us look bad. That's how I think about it.
I don't know. I still think Alabama losing to A&M looks worse than Penn State's loss. So that's why I had them sitting in a different location. But after Penn State, sitting in at number 5, right where both of you guys had them, I had them up at top number 4, actually. But the Ohio State University, the Buckeyes, on a bye week, didn't really get the chance to move up, with a win or anything. But, it's going to come down here in the next few weeks with some big matchups in the Big Ten. And we're going to really find out who those top 10 teams are and who the top teams are in the Big Ten and in our playoff rankings, of course. And we'll see who runs the gauntlet here. It's going to be a battle down the stretch. And this was kind of just everyone's kind of right around the same spot. We're really waiting for the separation to come like Georgia has shown.
Like, here's my thing. It's no criticism against Ohio State.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel so far. The reason why I had them sitting still at 5 is because I personally I think around 5, 6, 7 is where they should be because
that's where they should.
Yeah,
be.
they
have
look
rebounded.
like they're
rebounded.
But Matt, it's like I want to see against better teams.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
my thing. It's against Rutgers and Maryland. Everybody pretty much blows them out in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I know.
Like
But,
that, Ohio
they
State's
looked-
back to doing that because Ohio State always blows those teams out. But I want to see them do it.
Those first couple of weeks, they looked horrible. Even before they played Oregon, they were winning, but they weren't winning the Buckeye way. Now they are. C.J. Stroud has.
It's the Buckeye way, but again, it's against the two lower teams in the
Yeah.
Big Ten. Like it's not like criticism; it's just a fair thing.
But
I just want to see more out of
even
them.
that first game against they played Minnesota. Like Minnesota was really giving it to them, and they finally pulled away in that second half. But they didn't look very good at all.
Was Minnesota giving it to them? I didn't really feel like they were.
I mean, they were that first half at least.
That first half they were. I mean, you look in that game. I mean, it was all that running back. If that running back doesn't go down on an injury this season, Minnesota's probably in that top 25. We're talking about them right now. But they lose their top running back, and Tanner Morgan hasn't had a wide receiver to go to like he has had in the past few years. I mean, you look at Tanner Morgan, his third or fourth year in college football playing for Minnesota, and he's sent 2 different wide receivers to the NFL coming off 1,000-yard, season. So perhaps just Minnesota's just having one of those down years a little bit, especially with the loss of their big running back. So I think the Minnesota one we kind of have to look at a little bit impartial due to the fact that they've been without their star running back this season. Yeah. But, Mike, I do have a question for you. Talking Ohio State here.
Yeah.
For you to be impressed with Ohio State against Indiana this week, what do they have to do? Well, what are you looking for out of this game against Indiana this Saturday for you to see this team as a better team than they are?
I mean, I'm looking for them to do what they've been doing to Maryland and Rutgers because they're having a down year too. They're not what they were last year. They've had injuries.
I'll look for them to 66-17. Like that's what they did to those past couple teams.
I mean,
that's what they should do to this. They'll probably put 70 up.
Well, here's the question, because Penn State won 24-0. Michigan State wins 20-15. Those were 2 top 10 teams. Look at Indiana against Cincinnati. That was another number 2 team. They only lose by 14. So this Indiana squad has been sticking it to a lot of people, and really 2 bad losses, Penn State and Iowa. Those are their only big losses on the season I really feel so far. So what does Ohio State need to do from Mike here? Matt, I know you say it's got to be a blowout, but Mike, I really want to hear this one.
So like you just said, Penn State shut them out 24-0. And like we criticized Penn State, they probably should have won by more than that. But like you said, I mean, Rutgers State, and they're just behind these 2 teams. So for me, I think Ohio State has to do something similar to that, or at least better than what Penn State did.
So what about like a 42-14 game? You live with that one?
I'd be fine with that, yeah.
All right, 42-14.
That's what I think it's going to be. But
Penn State got to host Indiana. Indiana went on the road Indiana hosted Michigan State nearly to pull that upset. They host Ohio State this weekend in a night game, one of the few night games Ohio State plays on the season. So keep that one in mind.
That's an advantage they have. It's at least at home. They make you feel comfortable.
It's home. It's at night, and Ohio State doesn't play night games. At least they don't play night games at home. They play night games on the road, and sometimes just go back a couple years ago, Virginia Tech on the road, Penn State on the road at night. Yeah. This is what happens, but yeah, okay. Ohio State needs to go big here. Moving on, number 4 team in our rankings. Our top 4 looks the same as the AP poll. Number 4 sits Alabama. I have them sitting back a little bit. They lose to the unranked team. I've kind of pleaded my case. I had them back at 6. You guys still have them at number 4. I'll give my reasons why I don't, since I'm the odd one out here. They lose. I gave them the same treatment I gave to Iowa, to Penn State, to Ohio State, to Oregon. You lost to, a team you shouldn't have lost to. I mean, in Ohio State's case, in Penn State's, those are losses that I think you can live with. With a team like Alabama, this is not one you can live with. Same with Iowa, bad losses. Same with Oregon. They lost these bad games. I dropped them down. They have to earn that right to come back up into that top 4. And, Alabama, it's going to take a couple weeks. It's not, I'm only dropping them down 3-4 spots, No, I mean, I took it from 2. I dropped them down. I think last week I had them I had them number 7 and move them up to number 6 this week based on the fact that teams ahead of them lost in Iowa. That's why I have them moving up at all. Otherwise, I'd still have them back at 7th. They haven't, had any chance to go back and to become a top 5 team, in my personal opinion.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. There. Mostly the reason I put them at 4. It's Nick Saban. You gotta think Saban. You gotta think he's got this Bryce Young guy, and he's gonna turn him into something. And they really bounced back that last game. Mississippi State, they got them. They beat them
So, Matt, are you basing your top 5 on what you think this team can do, or what have they done? Because right now, Alabama, they did good at the beginning of the season, but when it came down to it and they needed to win against the team they should have won against, because, we talked about this a few weeks ago, it's not, Alabama should be, they should be number 2 right now because they could totally beat Cincinnati. They could go beat Ohio State or Penn State because they should have beat Texas A&M, and they didn't. Iowa should have beat Purdue. They didn't. You can't just take these for granted because it's Nick Saban. Dabo Swinney shouldn't be, on the edge of the top 25. He should be on a team right now that sits in the top 10 along with all these teams that we've been discussing right now. But it's not. It's what have you done this season, and has Alabama earned the top 5 spot based on this season alone?
I think a lot of people think, and I think it too. That game was a fluke. We know how bad Texas A&M is. We talk bad on them on this show.
It doesn't matter. You lose.
But
it's a loss
to them. I think I don't really have. I put them at 4. They're there and they're coming back. I don't even really have a good reason. I just put them there. They're there, and they're gonna be there in the end. I'm sure of it. So
they won against Mississippi State 49-9.
Yeah.
But that's Mississippi State. They weren't good to begin with.
Yeah.
It was a team that was going into that game 3-2 and are now 3-3 with no good wins on the season. And next week they'll take on Tennessee.
Did Mississippi State beat A&M too?
I believe so. Yeah, they won by 4 points the week prior. This is a team though that lost to Memphis, lost to LSU, somehow beat NC State, and then barely beat against LA Tech. So it's been a weird season for Mississippi State. So I just don't see anything out of Alabama right now that warrants them to be a top 4 team. You lost to a team you should have beat. And what's the same criticism we give to teams like Iowa, Ohio State, Penn State? When you lose to a team that you shouldn't have, you deserve to drop. Alabama deserves to drop and be treated the same way as everybody else in the country until they prove otherwise this season. I don't care they won the national championship last year. This is a different team. Different quarterback. They don't have their Heisman Trophy wide receiver. They hardly have a wide receivers core. If it wasn't for the Ohio State transfer and Jamison Williams, they wouldn't be having any discussion about Bryce Young being a Heisman Trophy winner. Potentially.
What do you got?
I'm going to be honest. I was just kind of
hard.
I'm going to be honest in this kind of weak response, but I was kind of afraid to drop them because I don't really know who to put them behind.
Exactly. That's another reason. I don't know who to put them behind. I'm not going to put Penn State. It's...
Why wouldn't you put Penn State above Alabama? They have the better loss.
Yeah.
They lose against what at the time was a top-ranked team in the country.
Here's my thing, though. We keep saying Penn State has a better loss, but then I'm not putting you on the spot, Matt, but other Penn State fans like Matt, and Matt has said this, after that Penn State loss, they're like, oh, Iowa's overrated. Well, we can't say they're overrated and say Penn State has the best loss. You can't have it both ways.
In my opinion, though, I don't think Iowa's overrated. They had a fluke game. They played bad. Ohio State played bad against Purdue a few years ago, and Iowa the year after that, and they still turned around and were one of the best teams in the country. Fluke games happen. Same thing with Alabama. They had a fluke game against A&M, but we have to treat them the same way as everybody else's fluke game.
But what if Penn State would have blew them out? Because they were on track to blow them out in the first quarter.
But they didn't. Alabama should have blown out A&M, but they didn't. Penn State could have blown out Iowa, but they didn't. Talk about what happened, not what could have happened.
I'm just saying, if Penn State blows them out with Clifford, do we still look at Iowa the same way? Because I don't.
No, but what if Ohio State blew out Oregon? What if? What if?
That was never a conversation, though.
There's so many what ifs.
What if Minnesota stayed in the football game against Ohio State?
Let's change the rankings. Drop Alabama down to 12 or something. There, satisfied. Next ranking? Let's go.
Next ranking, number 3. We all were unanimous on this one. Oklahoma. They're undefeated. And I think until they lose, they get to keep that spot, right? They had a great. They played good, and they got a young guy in there, and he's dominated since he came in. So I think we're all kind of like, all right, until you show us otherwise, that's your spot, right?
Yep.
All right, number 2, Cincinnati. Everyone unanimous this one as the number 2 team in the country. And I think right now everyone's kind of waiting for Cincinnati against SMU, right? That's kind of the game we're looking for in the American Conference, and really the only test left on the season for Cincinnati besides blowout Central every week. Obviously we're looking for them to blow out everyone they go up against. But until that SMU game is just run the table, right?
Yeah, that's like you said, that's their toughest game left. Obviously, like we just talked about with teams, fluke games happen, so I doubt it, but it could happen. It happens every
They just have to avoid the fluke.
Yeah.
All right,
that's
and
only
the number
standing in
one
the way.
team,
Yeah.
all across our rankings and the AP poll, number one Georgia. I mean, it's pretty obvious why they're there, right?
Do you see
we even have to go into it?
Yeah, there's nothing to talk about. Do you see any reason they shouldn't be number one? Because I don't. There's no reason.
No, when you look at the
They're
shutouts they've put
unstoppable.
on, the offense is incredible. I mean, you just have to look at their defense. If the defense was the only part of this team playing well, I think they're still number one.
Yeah, I mean,
I
there's
mean,
nothing.
I
Like we talked, I talked
number
about on
one.
Monday, Alec.
I don't think
They've
there's
only allowed-
anyone you could put above them,
There's
even
no
in the
argument.
even in the what if conversation. I don't think anyone's ahead of Georgia.
You cannot score against them, so they have to be number one.
I mean, they've allowed
like
what?
50 points over 50,
They've allowed-
close to 60.
They've allowed 5 touchdowns on the season.
I mean, and they have to be number one. You can't score on them.
Right, no, because I saw this on Instagram just the other day, because they had a Kentucky player who had 6 fingers, right?
Yeah,
And since they had just played, they were talking about the fact that this guy has more fingers on one hand than touchdowns that Georgia's defense has allowed this season.
it's insane.
So, yeah, it was just nonsense. So, that's our unanimous number one this week, Georgia. Cincinnati, though, if they continue to run the table and Georgia slips up, who knows? Who knows what could happen? But how about we get into some games from this past Saturday? Starting things off, the 7-0 Spartans nearly get upset on the road against the Indiana Hoosiers, who were going into this game at 2-3, now 2-4. Peyton Thorne looked about awful and got rid of any chance he had at a Heisman Trophy. And I think you look at the same way with Kenneth Walker. Guy had 23 carries, just 84 yards. I think he may have lost a shot here at the Heisman Trophy this season with the way that, Bijan Robinson down in Texas has been running so far.
Yeah, and when I was watching this game, I was texting you guys. It doesn't really make a huge difference, but it kind of, it made me feel good as a Penn State fan because, like I said, they shut out Indiana, and Michigan State had its hard time with them. They, like you said, Peyton Thorne really couldn't do anything in this game.
I mean, it was really the first time I think we've seen Indiana's defense look locked down. And I think as a Buckeye fan, that kind of worries me. You look ahead into this next week, and Indiana's got a big game, and obviously you kind of hope that they're riding the high of that, in Michigan State game, and they were that close, and then it comes down to this, last few plays, and I'm kind of hoping they're still like on the lowdown after losing this close game, and they don't bounce back against Ohio State, but they have every chance to do so, and it could be one of those fluke games for Ohio State going the other way, which could end Ohio State's, pretty much end their season in a way of national championship hopes or a New Year's Six game. So Indiana is playing with all the cards right now. They've nearly pulled off a few upsets on the season right there with Michigan State, and they have a chance to do it once again. But, I mean, you look at Michigan State, I think you just have to give credit to their defense in this football game, forcing turnovers, getting to the quarterback 3 times. They had 3 sacks in this game. So I think you just have to give them credit where credit is due, and they held on when they had to. I mean, 8 of their 20 points came on the leg of their kicker. So Michigan State, they just have to be better. They had a down game and they survived. That's what you always talk about. When you have those fluke games, can you survive? And Michigan State did.
Yeah, and Alec, I don't want to get too much into it because we have other games to get into, but since we're talking about Indiana and you guys play them this week, are you after watching that performance against Michigan State, is there any concerns because they're playing at home? I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
I would say I'm not terribly concerned based on the fact that Ohio State's coming off a bye. We know when Ryan Day has an extra week to prepare, he has been one of the best coaches in college football. And keep in mind, he's a coach that right now is still undefeated in the Big Ten play. He has never lost in a Big Ten setting, and I wouldn't count on it right here for Indiana to become his first loss, especially with the preparation they've been going through. An extra week to get everybody healthy once again. They should be coming back with a pretty stacked deck. Haskell Garrett set the return on the defensive side of things as well, so a huge boost to a defensive line that has started to play a little bit better. I'm still looking for the defense, though, to get involved in this football game and make stops. I mean, you always have to keep in mind, Indiana can score the football. Luckily, I mean, Jack Tuttle was the quarterback in this game, and, Ohio State has a great track record against Indiana. You just look the last 4 seasons, it's been pretty much 4 straight blowouts, I believe, against this team. So I'm not overlooking Indiana by any stretch, but I think it's one Ohio State I think can feel confident going into, especially with the quarterback play they've been going to recently. C.J. Stroud has looked like Justin Fields of last season. He has improved a lot since those first 2 games and sat out against Akron with the arm injury. I think he recovered in that week, and I think since then he has been on the money. He has been a Heisman quarterback, and if he started like that at the beginning of the season, I think right now he'd be the favorite to win the Heisman. So I'm not concerned, and I love Travion Henderson, the running back, despite the fact that he's getting less carries than both Kenneth Walker and Bijan Robinson. He's averaging more yards per, and he's racking up, yards and touchdowns every other week. And honestly, I think Travion Henderson is probably your second favorite guy right now to take home the Heisman for the running backs category. If they had different categories here, I would say Travion Henderson right now, since the number 2 back in the country with a good chance of going number 1 if he continues to dominate here in Big Ten play. Ohio State still has the best wide receivers core in the country. I think really the question marks come with the offensive line play. Can they keep C.J. Stroud in the pocket, keep him healthy? Indiana's going to be sending the blitz in this game, so they're going to try and rattle Stroud. He's a young quarterback on the road in a tough environment. Indiana, despite the fact that they're going to come into this 2-4, they're going to bring the money. And with their performance against Michigan State last week, I think it's going to draw in a lot more fans. So I think it's an environment Ohio State could struggle in the first half, but knowing Ohio State, knowing second half adjustments by Ryan Day, he's undoubtedly one of the best second half quarterbacks in college football as the moment right now. So I'm not worried entirely. I am concerned just a little bit, though, that it could end up being one of Ohio State's fluke games. You know what happens? You can almost count on it every year. We haven't had to count on it, though, with Ryan Day at the helm. So I'm hoping that, tradition stays strong and he remains, an undefeated Big Ten coach.
Yeah, and you said with Tuttle, I don't think he played terrible against Michigan State. He was just going against a good defense.
Right.
But you could probably argue Michigan State, over the course of the whole year, their defense probably played better than Ohio State's.
Probably, yeah. But I'm looking for Ohio State. These last few games, they've gone up against, some okay offenses, and they've dominated. So I'm okay with what Ohio State's defense is doing right now. I'm not sure if they'll... Obviously, I put them at number 4 in my rankings, and I think that's just how things are falling out at the moment. And obviously, it's going to come to change here with the, next 5 games in the Big Ten on the schedule, how those things work out. So I'm looking for Ohio State to show they are top 4 defense, because you look at the other defenses sitting in the top, 4, the other 3 spots for them. Oklahoma, their defense, besides the Texas game, has been ecstatic, and the offense is now following suit. Cincinnati, they have a top defensive back in the nation who could easily go top 10 in the NFL draft this coming year. The guy hasn't allowed a touchdown in like 200 snaps. He's absolutely insane. The Sauce Gardner. So, yeah, I'm looking for Ohio State's defense to look better than they have so far. I like what they've done the last few weeks. They've gone into some zone defenses. Kerry Coombs has been moved up to the press box to start calling plays from there. He said it has really opened up his play calling. He misses being down on the field. He misses the excitement. But since he's been, up in the box, I'm seeing the field a lot better, and I think it's helping everybody out, and I have to agree with them. This defense has looked completely different from the start of the season, but Mike, as you're saying, do it against top teams, then I'll believe you.
Yeah, you got to
this is their chance here in the next few weeks. I think Indiana's a good chance to do it, despite the fact they sit at 2-4. Look at 3 of their losses. They're the top 25 teams right now. So you have to take that 2-4 record with a grain of salt. Ohio State just has to come out and do their job, and then I think we go from there.
Yeah, look at 5-6 years ago, Penn State was 2-4.
Right,
and they were able to beat them
it
at
happens.
home. So upsets happen. We just talked about fluke games happen. Like
survive the fluke though.
You can call that. You can call that Penn State win over Ohio State with the block kick. You can call that a fluke game. It started.
It started up for Penn State, but
at the
time,
the week before that did against Minnesota. That was an overtime win. That's what got them going.
Yeah, but still.
Mike, what were you about to say there before Matt cut you off?
I'm sorry.
So I don't remember now.
All right, that's fine. Let's move on. Next game here. Half an hour into it. We're one game down. Let's go here. Next one. Number 8, Oklahoma State Cowboys coming off the big win over Casey Thompson, the Texas Longhorns. Longhorns fall out of the top 25, now 4-3 on the season. Bijan Robinson, though, his case still strong right now for the Heisman. 21 carries, 6.4 yards per with 2 touchdowns, 135 yards for those of you wondering. And Casey Thompson didn't look like himself as he did the past few weeks against other top defenses. Oklahoma State, I think you have to give credit to their defense in this football game. Marcus Washington, leading wide receiver for Texas, only had 60 yards on 2 receptions. No one was getting the ball, on any regular basis, and Oklahoma State's quarterback did enough. 19-32, 178 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Jalen Warren on the ground held strong for them, 5.8 yards per carry on 33 carries. Spencer Sanders also ran the ball 10 times for 20 yards and a touchdown in that game, and their leading wide receiver didn't do much either. This was a run-dominant game for Oklahoma State and a defensive-dominating game. So I think you look at this one for Oklahoma State, they're showing the defensive strength that we're starting to see now out of a couple top Big 12 teams. And they're showing right now in the Big 12, they're getting away from the air raid football system where it's touchdown, 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 touchdown. You see it with teams like this, Oklahoma State and Baylor, and Iowa State even. These teams have kind of followed suit with the rest of the nation. A great offense is fine. You can't win in big games with no defense. And we saw that with Oklahoma in these past few college football playoffs. So I think the rest of the Big 12 is adapting and they're going right along with it. And Oklahoma State is kind of setting the table right now as the, second most dominant team in the Big 12 with their defense.
I mean, you said it all right there, man. They got a good
I've just been
defense
talking
there.
today, haven't I? What did I take? It was those egg rolls you brought me, Matt.
Yeah, those egg rolls are good, though. I mean,
They just got me going. I'm going to have those before every one of these shows, so I'll just
You
be
gotta
ready
get
to
fueled
go.
up before the
I'll
show,
bring
Alec.
more.
I had some
I'll
ramen.
bring
I got
more.
some egg rolls. Whew, I'm ready,
had
boys.
I had that lo mein with chicken. That was pretty good. Mike, how was your food?
Good. You gotta get fueled up before the show.
Yeah, we
You
gotta get
energy.
filled up. We're filled up here.
That we are.
We
All
got
right.
Alec going. All right.
Well, how about we go ahead to the next game, just in case
Good.
we start going into something else, as I feel we will with some of these final games. Ole Miss
yeah.
gets back in the win category, 31-26 over the Tennessee Volunteers.
Tennessee.
You know, I think the story of this game was Matt Corral on the ground, 195 yards, 231 through the air. I mean, what? I don't see how that
I like how you
even is
had.
possible.
I like how you had in the show
10
notes.
garbage.
10 garbage. Yeah.
10 garbage.
Well, no,
I mean-
I think you look at this game. I mean, it wasn't that I was calling Tennessee garbage. I was more just putting in my notes there the garbage in this, because I think the kind of storyline coming away from it is the Tennessee
stuff on the
fans
field.
throwing stuff on the field, garbage.
yeah.
They
Oh,
had to
yeah, the
evacuate the
garbage can. They
cheerleaders.
threw a
There was a
golf
20-minute delay. Lane Kiffin gets hit in the leg with a golf ball, and
He
I believe
one-handed-
47 people have been arrested from the stadium during that game and after. So, I mean, a lot going on with that Tennessee squad, and I have a feeling there's going to be some big sanctions coming in from the SEC or the NCAA coming in the next few weeks as they look into this investigation. It could end up hurting them with scholarships or something of the like, or potential bowl game suspensions. Not that Tennessee will get there, but you know that's a different story. How about Matt? I mean, the garbage in this game, but how about Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin? I mean, they have created a dominant squad in Ole Miss, and you know they obviously had the one loss. Since then they've looked just as they did the rest of the season. I mean, they sit right on the outside, and you know if they keep getting big wins, I don't think there's a problem coming in the next few weeks. If we lose some of our undefeated teams, they're going to have some good matchups against Auburn and Texas A&M, in which Ole Miss at the time coming down there in the next few weeks could be a top 10 team once again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to give, hats off to Lane Kiffin. That guy, fighting off all the garbage. I think he one-handed catch a water bottle that was thrown at him. I think
Yes,
I
he
saw
did.
that
He
somewhere.
Odell'd it.
That was amazing. He could have been Beast of the Week. I mean, he one-handed got that. That was amazing. I mean, they did what they needed to do, against that Tennessee team. I mean, they did everything right. And I mean, come on, Tennessee. Why do you gotta be like that? Why do you gotta throw garbage? They just might be the me of the week if nobody else, does something dumber.
Right.
But come
I
on.
feel like this isn't even the first time we've talked about Tennessee throwing garbage on this season.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen all the bad teams throw garbage.
No, Matt, we're talking about this. I'm getting some serious deja vu. I think the last time I was craving egg rolls was Tennessee was throwing stuff on the field.
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure this isn't even the first time it's happened this season.
It might be the egg rolls.
Hey, you never know. Hey, I had the egg rolls afterwards, so keep that in mind. Tennessee throws garbage. I want egg rolls. There's a clear connection here that we're seeing apparently.
So
I'll have to look into that and
think
get back to you guys next week.
Huh? Do you think egg rolls are garbage?
No, I love egg rolls.
Well, you think garbage, and then you're like,
it could be a sign.
I mean, you never know what's inside of those egg rolls. They're deep fried and you dip them in, soy sauce. They're delicious.
Yeah,
I don't care what's on the inside of them. I mean, it could be garbage for all I know.
As long as it's good, it's all that matters. Right?
I mean, they fill them with cabbage, garbage and cabbage. Similar there, perhaps.
I'm definitely clipping this from the show and posting it on social media.
Oh gosh. If you want to check us out on social media, head over to Instagram there at Casual Sports Report, as well on TikTok. We got a TikTok going there, and of course on Twitter, where we tend to just retweet everything going on in sports or anything we don't get to there. Obviously, going to show up on our Twitter page most of the time, and it's also right into the action. If you want to interact with us on Twitter as well, you can do that, or you can put it in the comments during our show weekdays 2 to 3 on ysnlive.com. You know that. You're watching it. Let's get some more football games out of the way. Ole Miss, Tennessee. Obviously, not much to talk about there, despite the fact Ole Miss was just unstoppable with Matt Corral. Or Corral, sorry.
Matt Corral. Matt Corral. And
oh, it is Matt Corral.
Corral, yeah.
It is Corral.
I was thinking Coral. Yeah. Whatever. Next game here, Auburn knocking down Arkansas. The Razorbacks continue to slide here. It has been all downhill since they took on Georgia. And I think we kind of looked at that, looking at those weeks. This is kind of the highlight of their schedule, right? The Texas A&M game, Georgia, Ole Miss, Auburn. This is where we said they were going to get tested, and they have not survived their gauntlet. They now lose 3 out of the last 4. And that Texas A&M game, I think, is the one you look at like, hey, at least we won that one. I mean, it's been a rough season, though, in the ranked matchups for Arkansas. Obviously, they've already faced Texas A&M. Or they faced Texas and Texas A&M. They lose to Georgia, lose to Ole Miss by 1, now lose by 15 to Auburn. Auburn's back on the up and up, though.
That's what I've been saying. Auburn's
coming.
We talk about roller coasters. They've been like that all year, or so far. It's the halfway point of the year. So it's like they play good against Arkansas, but then they struggle against other teams. Like they barely win by 5 against LSU. I mean, I know they're not ranked, they're not what they were be, but they're just confusing. And
yeah,
I told you.
Bo Nix, I mean, he played average, 21-26, 292, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. You look at that and you're like, well, all right, if he plays like that every week, this should be, a good team. Then you look at it, now they really didn't have much of a ground game. But when they have the ground game going, there doesn't seem to be any passing from Bo Nix. There just doesn't seem to be any balance in their offense, and I think that's the big problem. And right now, you look at this game, 2 touchdowns through the air, 2 on the ground. The defense is being a big part of why this team's winning, and along with their kicker.
And I told you, Alec, this game, we've been hard on Auburn all year, especially for the Penn State win. You could argue this probably helps Penn State because now they're back. I think they're up to 19 or something like that. Auburn is now.
Yeah, Auburn sits at 19 right now.
And they beat a 17 Arkansas team, who's when they lost 2 in a row, but they were still ranked 17. So it makes that look a little better. But they're just too inconsistent.
Yeah, the inconsistency, I think, is probably what's going to fall apart for Auburn. And, they got another rough schedule coming up for them. They have Ole Miss next, after this week. They got a bye. So after that, they host Ole Miss, and they head out to A&M before hosting Mississippi State, South Carolina. Then they host Alabama in the Iron Bowl to finish off the season. So, it's a gauntlet for Auburn. They have a chance to win out, potentially, if they can play like they did in this game. But if they go back to playing how they did against, LSU or even Penn State when they lose by 8 there, they could finish the rest of the season, without a win. It's just, I think, too many question marks right now for Auburn to really take this game away and go like, oh, well, this is a good football team. Because I think they're still on the edge of, is this team good or have they just somehow found a way to win? I mean, you'll even look at the other side. KJ Jefferson had 228 yards and 2 touchdowns. And on the ground, he had 66 yards. And Raheem Sanders had, 64. Traylon Smith had 42. And then Dominique Johnson had 42. So a great game on the ground. And Traylon Burks through the air, the number 1 wide receiver, 2 touchdowns and 109 yards. So Arkansas, their offense looks fine. I think they need more, but their defense sucks.
You said it there. I mean,
what are you going to say about a team that allows 38 points in a ranked matchup? You can't allow a top 25 matchup to get blown out by double digits, by 15 and lose to the other team scoring 38.
Yeah, and they fall on a hard time. Like you said, now they lost 3 in a row.
Yeah.
And how about this one?
Right.
The Oregon Ducks nearly fell again. They barely win against the California Golden Bears, who came into this game with 1 win on the season. They are 1-5, and they came within 7 points, 24-17 win for the Oregon Ducks.
Anymore?
Yeah, they're still number 10. They're 5-1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've kind of been sitting on the outside of my top 10. I keep looking at them. Mike, you had them sitting at number 9 this week, but I still had them, I think, on the outside looking in, based solely on the fact that they haven't performed as well since Ohio State and since that Stanford loss. They've kind of going in the downhill direction, and until I see something from them, I can't rationalize them going back into that top 10 while the undefeated still sit ahead of them. I mean, there's a lot of undefeated teams right now. And we're at the halfway point of the season. It's going to shuffle out here, and we're going to find out who's who in the last half of the season for a lot of these teams. So, I mean, still a long way to go, but I think you look at this game for Oregon, their defense it wasn't the same defense that held down Ohio State. I mean, they allowed 247 yards, 2 touchdowns, and as you touched there, C.J. Verdell is out for the season. Travis Dye on the ground, though, 7.6 yards per carry, 145 yards and a touchdown for him. Anthony Brown through the air, 20-28, 244 with a touchdown. This isn't the offense Oregon used to have, despite the fact they're putting up similar numbers. Travis Dye, their leading running back, also their leading wide receiver here, 7 receptions, 73 yards, and Devon Williams behind him, 67 yards. So it's an Oregon team that clearly needs C.J. Verdell back just to open this field up, I think, more for them. And they're obviously not going to get him back this season, so it's going to be a tough task for Oregon, I think, to stay as high as they are in the rankings with games like this. I mean, they luckily have an easier schedule to ride out with. UCLA, though, this coming weekend, I think potentially a big game for UCLA to come in and steal. I mean, 5-1 versus 5-2. So it's a big chance for UCLA, despite the fact they're not ranked, to come in and pull the upset in what would be the second upset over Oregon in the last 3 weeks. Or pardon me, in the month of October, I should say. And you look then, after that, it's an easy ride for Oregon. They have Colorado, Washington State, Utah, the big question mark in there with Oregon State. So it's not a tough road. If Oregon runs the table and wins the Pac-12, they're probably in the college football playoff because of the win over Ohio State, especially if Ohio State becomes the Big Ten champion. They then would hold the win over the Big Ten champion and would be a Pac-12 champion. So Oregon would probably get into that top 4 come playoff time, but they have to do better than this in games against a team they need to blow out. This was their fluke game. They survived. They couldn't survive the Stanford one, and this makes 2 flukes on the season. Another one could be in the end of the season for Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fluke game, but they found a way to win it, so just let's move on.
Yeah, all right here. I feel like this is a game you guys are both going to love. Virginia Tech was ranked earlier in the season. They had a great start, but now they sit 3-3 after a loss to now the number 23 ranked Pitt Panthers, 28-7. First half in this game was all Panthers, 21-0. They outscored VT. Second half, though, tied to 7-7. Didn't matter at that point. It was over. Kenny Pickett putting in the Heisman race potential. I think I need more out of him before he starts getting that conversation. 22 of 37, 203 yards, 2 touchdowns. And it really came down to their run game. 140 yards for Abanikata. So, they need more out of Pickett if he wants to be in that Heisman conversation. But to be in the conversation for an ACC championship, they're sitting high and pretty right now, and you got to love the way they are running the table right now. They sit first place to the ACC Coastal, and it's theirs to lose right now. Virginia behind them at 3-2 in conference play. VT behind them at 2-2. Georgia Tech behind them at 2-2. Virginia Tech now at 1-1 in conference play. UNC is 3-3, and obviously Miami, Florida, and Duke still winless in conference play. So right now, they have the best chance of taking the ACC Coastal, and they're far and ahead the favorites right now out of that area. Matt, I know you love this team. Why don't you talk about this one?
Kenny Pickett, man. I mean, it's unlikely that he's going to win the Heisman, but the fact that they're talking about him, I mean, he started out 75-1. Now he's now 25-1. That are his odds. He needs a lot better
performances, though, down the second half of the season before you go on there. I mean, this game, he was throwing right under 50% pass completion. He only has 2 touchdowns, and this is going up against a team 3-3. You see a team like Ohio State or Texas or Alabama with their big guys in the games like these, they have to perform bigger. And I think that's the one thing keeping Pickett away from a Heisman Trophy is in games like these, he's not putting up mega numbers. You need mega numbers in games like these when you go to blow out somebody, like this. It wasn't Blacksburg, though, so, give some credit to that performance on the road in Virginia Tech in a tough place to play.
Kenny Pickett, I'm going to go out and say this right now. I don't care if I get, shot at for it, but, Kenny Pickett is the best quarterback in the ACC. He is. He's arguably the best quarterback in the ACC. It's hard to argue that. And he is. And, I mean, Pitt, this is not an insult to Pitt at all, but the fact, he plays for Pitt, and I think that's, that's why, it's not killing his Heisman shots, but everybody's like, oh, it's Pitt. If he was on an SEC team and he was doing this, they're like, oh yeah, he's gonna go. But it's Pitt. But that's what a lot of people are saying. But Pitt has had some great teams. They are known for this blue collar toughness, and that's what Kenny Pickett definitely has. He has the experience. He's been there 4 years, and I gotta get up to a game. They play Clemson this Saturday too, and that's really gonna show. I know Clemson has fallen off, but it's still going to face Dabo Swinney, and they still have DJ, and that guy's going to be a great quarterback in the coming years. Just an off year, but still to go beat Clemson. This is a team that's been in the national championship run the past 4 or 5 years, and you're going to go in and face them, and you need to beat them. So if they do that, and I bet you that first of all they're going to shoot up more in the rankings. And, his Heisman numbers are going to get even better if he performs well against Clemson.
Well, Matt, keep in mind right now, Clemson, despite the fact they're not top 25, they are the number 1 team receiving votes outside of the top 25. Yeah. So basically, they're number 26 in the country based on that. So they're right on the outside looking in for you. I do have the question, though, you posed that Kenny Pickett, best quarterback in the ACC. Obviously, DJ not having the year everyone expected. How about Sam Hartman out of Wake Forest or Emory Jones in Louisville? Despite the fact they're not winning, he's been putting up some beautiful numbers.
They've been putting up some great numbers, too. That's why I kind of said arguably, because I kind of remember about those guys. But Kenny Pickett, man.
I love what I've seen out of him so far.
I love Kenny Pickett.
He's done what they need to win, and as I think we talked, he needs to put up bigger numbers, I think. Mike, any thoughts on Pitt right now?
I mean,
or Virginia Tech on the other side.
Obviously,
I know they lost to Western Michigan, but I mean that long time.
That was their fluke. They didn't survive the fluke.
That was their fluke. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Virginia Tech is a hard place to play. I mean, you saw Notre Dame the week before, 2 weeks before that. They ended up winning, but they ended up on a last-second field goal. But with this game with Clemson, I was listening to 92.3 The Fan last week before these Saturday games, and they were talking about this is going to be a big game, but for order it to be a even bigger game, Clemson and Pitt both have to win this weekend, which they both did. So it's going to be an interesting one. I don't really know too much what to expect. I feel like Clemson, because of the experience they have, and sometimes when Pitt, they come home, play a team they should beat. It's the same thing with the Steelers sometimes, Matt. Sometimes they come home and play a team they should beat, and they're looking good on the year, and they sometimes lay an egg. So,
yeah.
I mean, I definitely, in terms of Kenny Pickett, I do definitely want to see more out of him so far, like you're saying, Alec. I mean, you have the Western Michigan loss. I mean, I don't. Which win really stands out to me that much? I don't know. So,
I mean, I think it's the big chance for them to finally get a big win against Clemson. If we're actually going to talk about that one on tomorrow's show, the Thursday preview for Saturday football. So we'll get into more Pitt discussion tomorrow. Don't you fans worry about it. Next game up on our schedule, though, 14 minutes left in our show, so we'll get down into some more stuff here. But now, back-to-back weeks, BYU has lost, this time to a number 20 ranked Baylor. And despite the fact that the Cougars are now 5-2, they've fallen out of the top 25, and I think the question marks finally have arrived for them after they lose, who's the quarterback for the Jets?
Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson, thank you. After they lose Zach Wilson, I've said his name 100 times in the show, and I automatically forget it going into right here. But I think the question marks finally rise for BYU. They had a great season so far, and I think 5-2 right now. They're sitting on the outside of a bowl game. I think you live with this right now if you're a BYU fan. They're on the outside looking in terms of their future. But they're a good program, and they've put something together. This was by far one of BYU's hardest schedules. I mean, they were pulling in teams from the Pac-12 and the Big 12 and the ACC for them this year in their independence. For an independent team right now that's going to be joining the Big 12 in a couple seasons, I think you like what you see out of BYU, and its program clearly on the rise.
Yeah, and like we talked about in the past, it's hard to replace a guy like Zach Wilson when you're a smaller school like them. But we'll see if it helps them joining a conference like the Big 12. So they're definitely preparing themselves. I think they did that this year in scheduling some of these games. Like, hey, we're going to be moving up a conference. Let's prepare ourselves. And they did that with Baylor and some other teams they played this year, and some teams they have remaining on their schedule.
Right. It's great to see an independent team go up against big opponents and actually be able to win. I'm looking at you, Notre Dame. But BYU in this game, their quarterback, Jaron Hall, 22 of 31, 342 yards. He only had one touchdown. The ground game punched in the other two. He was one of those on the ground. But Puka Nakua, 5 receptions, 168 yards, and a touchdown for him in this game. I think BYU, I think they live with their offense in this. They were okay there. They need to find something else on the ground, but obviously I think the big focal point going forward for BYU is the tougher defense. When you look at their 2 losses on the season, one to Boise State, they let up 26 points in that game, and even in some of their losses, they lose. USF put up 27 against them. Utah State put up 20. Even, obviously, in this game, Baylor puts up 38. A stronger defense is going to be huge for BYU come Big 12 playing time. So plenty of time to grow, plenty of time to recruit, and I think it's going to help them a lot in recruiting. The show right now, even as an independent team coming up, losing their big quarterback, that they're not going to fall back into being an unknown team, that they're still going to go out there and try and compete every week. So I love what I'm seeing right now at BYU.
I agree.
All right, one more college football game here. This was a huge one from this past week. Neither team sits ranked right now, but the Utah Utes pick up the win over Arizona State, 35-21. Both teams now 2 losses on the season, 4 wins for the Utes, 5 for Arizona State. And what a game this was for Utah, man. They get another big win, and despite the fact that they sit unranked, I think they're probably the best unranked team in the nation right now.
Yeah, Utah. I mean, you can't. I mean, Utah's always been that hard and hard and grindful team. Like they'll take you to the last minute. And sometimes they're gonna win those games. I mean, you said a couple losses.
Same with Arizona State.
Wins. Same with Arizona State. They're both like that. And this is the game where that comes down to it. Where just someone's gonna have to win. And Utah ended up being that team. That's all it is right there. I mean, they're both dominant teams. I bet. I mean, they're not dominant. They're dominant in their own way. We'll put it that way. And if you put that team against, a top 15 team, you can go down the list or pick a team. I bet you they put up a good game against them. Like if you have like Utah play Oregon or Arizona State play Oregon, I mean, I bet you they'd take it to them.
Yeah, I mean, probably, and to your point in that, you guys both picked Arizona State to win that game. I was the only one that took Utah in this one. Yep. It was one of those games that I think you kind of felt was going back and forth the whole way. Fortunately, we can't talk any more about this one. Let's go on to some MLB talk before we finish things out with a little bit of NBA and NHL. Red Sox fell to the Astros last night. Series now tied at 2 apiece, and obviously the Dodgers make the big 8th inning comeback. They were down big, come back into it, score 4 in the 8th, and win this one 6-5 at home. Next 2 games also in LA. What are your guys' thoughts going in the rest of this series now that the Dodgers have shown they can win?
For me, I know it was one game last night. The Braves still lead the series, but
yeah,
took
a lot of them out.
I don't want to go overboard here, but it kind of felt last night like, man, they might be losing the series here because you're up 5-2 in the 8th. You have a chance to take a 3-0 lead against defending champs at their home stadium. It just
they had it in the bag.
We'll have to see how Atlanta responds. But
Mike, I'm gonna have to interrupt you.
No, wait.
Hurry up.
We'll have to see how they respond. Matt, you're gonna get a chance. Hold on.
Okay.
We have to see how they respond, which they can respond because after me now we're talking Monday. They're a hot team. They've been hot the last month of the season and in the playoffs. So what's he doing?
I'm just leaving. I'm letting you guys go at it.
Me and Matt are on the same page. It's just it feels like they lost. I know I said this on some series last year, and you kind of got on me for saying it. It's like, the series isn't over, which I'm not saying it's over, but it just felt like it was over last night because Bellinger going again.
If it did feel like, they had their hearts ripped out, like they were a 5-2 bomb in the 8th, and they had the Dodgers fans leaving early. All those Dodgers fans left the game early. Oh, we're gonna lose. They had them all down and out, and then boom, Cody Bellinger. First of all, this guy can hit high heat. And he put it right up there for him. Why would you even give
Matt,
that
while
guy
you're on the
a chance?
topic, while you're on that topic, the pitch they threw before was the same exact pitch.
Yeah,
and they threw it again,
I
and he knocks it out of the park.
I know. Like, he'll adjust to that. Like, we were talking about that earlier today. But you had to throw it low and away, give him the chase it. He was swinging for the fences. If you just had to give him a dirty pitch, throw it down in the dirt, he would have swung. I know he would. He was down in the count. The count was 1-2. He had him down in the count. He gave him a high heater to smack, and that just killed that pitcher's momentum right there. And that's what ended up him giving another run off. And then Jansen for the Dodgers was just lights out. I know I was talking about the best closer in this game. He's definitely up there. Definitely.
Lock it down. All right, guys, we do have to move on here. A few minutes left. NBA, obviously. We'll talk more MLB tomorrow as more games in the series going on tonight. NBA, though, they kicked off yesterday, or tipped off, I should say. Milwaukee Bucks winning at home. Matt, you and I were wrong in our predictions. Lakers lose and the Nets lose. Bucks had a good game, though. You got to give credit where credit's due. They didn't, come out flat in their opener, and I think you love that, and it happens sometimes when you have it. But I think, as you alluded to, a lot of behind the scenes, probably too much for the Nets to overcome at the moment right now with the whole Kyrie Irving mess, and we'll see how it works out. Durant, though, 32 points, you expect it. Big surprise, though, I think, was Patty Mills. He was a great addition in the offseason and kind of gave them a point guard that they needed with, Kyrie Irving kind of being a big question mark. Paul Millsap only played 5 minutes along with DeAndre Bembry, who only put 4. 2 big guys that can probably be added into this offense at any time. Point in time, LaMarcus Aldridge didn't do anything in his debut for the team. Joe Harris didn't get anything going in this one as well. But James Harden, 28-8. You live with that. And Nicholas Claxton, he's a young guy, but he's on his way up here. And I think he's got a good chance, to really be a key part of this team. We'll flip this over to the Lakers side, then I'll hand it over to you guys here quickly for your analysis. Steph Curry didn't have to do much. He had a very quiet triple-double in this one, 21, 10, and 10. Jordan Poole came in, second leading scorer, 20 points. He's been a great addition to this team. Nemanja Bjelica was great as well. Otto Porter Jr. and Andre Iguodala, big pieces of this squad. And I think you just have to look at Andrew Wiggins finally getting some scoring going on, 12, 7, and 1. Not what they want, but obviously the big part of this game. LeBron and AD combined for 67 points, and the rest of the team barely combines for 50. They need more out of their guys coming up here. I'll hand it over to you guys. Talk here for this first day of the NBA. Then we'll talk some stuff going on tonight.
I mean, I didn't see these games because I was watching playoff baseball, but just looking at the scores on my phone and hearing about, we'll talk about the Lakers here, with seeing highlights and stuff. I know it's the first game. I'm not overreacting at all. I'm not want to do that. I really don't think you look at basketball season until like Christmas time.
Right.
But with Russell Westbrook, it didn't seem like he was a fit last night. I mean, talk about 8 points. He, some turnovers. He couldn't really shoot from the outside, which is his game, unfortunately. I mean, he's gonna have to adapt to being the third guy with this team. That's what I've been saying since I got him. He's gonna have to adapt to being the third guy on this team because that's what he is. And he might have to change his style. I mean, I heard people talking about him coming off the bench. I don't agree with that, but he's gonna have to change some stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the big basketball guy. I'm gonna start watching it more. I'll pay attention to other games, but I did watch a little bit of this, game from the highlights at least. And I mean, Alec, you've been saying it. The old new Lakers. I mean, they're all old.
I mean, we'll see. I think really, we always talk about it's these first 20 games. You don't look at it until after that. You see what you have at 20, then you write it from there. This is kind of a team you wonder if they get to 20, how much farther can they go? A lot of these guys old. They got a lot of mileage.
Yeah, they got to get used to playing with the arthritis, and then they'll start playing good.
LeBron James just said the other night, or actually he said after last night's game, he told Russ to pick himself up. Don't get yourself down on one game. It's just one game.
It's just one game, yeah.
And let's get off this quick. We'll talk some NBA going on tonight. Obviously, some big games to start the season. Pacers, Hornets, Bulls, Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, Wizards, Raptors, Rockets, Timberwolves, 76ers, Pelicans, Magic, Spurs, Kings, Blazers, Nuggets, Sun, the big one here tonight at 10, and Thunder, Jazz. And obviously, the game I think we want to talk about right here, and we'll go ahead and do that. Cavs, Grizzlies, open it up the season, boys. Our Cavs are starting. I really am curious to see what we get out of our squad this season.
I definitely am too.
The main thing is...
Go ahead, Matt.
Real quick, the main thing is we got to shut down John Morant. We have those defensive guys.
Good luck.
We got Evan Mobley in there now. I mean, Jared Allen. But don't let Kevin Love guard him because he'll just jump over him again.
Well,
that's their main key right there.
And they were talking about him. I mean, they'd like to play Kevin Love around 20 minutes a game because he's not a part of this rotation really that much, and he's
old.
You got a guy like Lauri Markkanen who was like Larry Nance Jr. He's just a younger version of him.
Yeah.
And that's what Kevin Love's position is. So I'm interested to see the rotation this year. And like you said, Alec, I talked to you about this on Monday. Their win total for this season, I think, unless it's changed, the last time I saw was 27.5. I definitely think they can get over that. Last year they had 22 in a short season, in a 10-game less season last year. And they have better guys this year. And I know they're going to lose some games. Obviously, they're going to
lose a lot of games.
They're still not there yet. But I see them as a play-in team. I'm not guaranteeing it, but yeah, they could be a play-in team.
I think they have the guys to be a play-in team. It's just putting it together, something we haven't seen from Cleveland. We see a lot of individual play, and I think that's been the one big issue for them. And we'll give you a quick injury update. Dean Wade is a day-to-day, but doubtful for Wednesday's opener. Dylan Windler still out. He won't play again tonight here. Still dealing with a hip injury. And for the Memphis Grizzlies, small forward Dylan Brooks is out. He's out for 2 to 3 weeks right now, dealing with thigh and hand injury. So, I mean, I think it's a good chance Cleveland can take it here tonight to open out the season and could set the table for a good run at some point. They need one. And Matt and I were talking yesterday after our show. We were just thinking, man, this team has one of the hardest opening schedules in the NBA.
I was saying that
they
too.
go up against everybody.
If they can make it through that, then they'll be all right.
Right. They have to win, I'd say 25% of the first 20 games here. Go 5-15 as a start, and that would be lucky for them, I think, based on who they have to play here to start things out. But that's going to do it for us here today on the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec. That's Matt and Mike over there to that way. Guys, give them a big smile for the camera. But obviously, Power Hour coming up next on ysnlive.com. Make sure to tune into that. I'm Alec. I told you those two already. We'll see you all next time. Peace out.
Cavs.